that's no way of getting an education. I was the only Jewish child in the class. I had no friends. There were no extracurricular activities because those were all done by the Hitler Youth. Really all I could do was go to school, listen to the teacher, take the tests, and go back home. Anyway, that lasted until what became known as Kristallnacht. And I can skip over all the little things that happened from 33 to 38 and get right into what happened at Kristallnacht. The way it actually happened was that early in November, late October, there was an edict that all Polish Jews that had lived in the part of Germany that had become part of Poland were going to be deported back to Poland. The rest of the Jewish population in Munich, for example, spent a day gathering food and blankets, etc., because October and November in that part of Germany is pretty well like it is here, cold, rainy, and generally miserable. Well, that train got to the Polish border and Poland wouldn't let them in, so these families were stranded there out in the open for a number of weeks. Well, there was a young student in Paris, at the University of Paris, whose parents were involved in this. He got very upset, as you might imagine. He got a gun, went to the German embassy and shot the first person he saw. It was a junior official at the embassy. But he died a couple of days later, and that became the official excuse for Kristallnacht. It was, as far as the Germans were concerned, it was a righteous indignation for this killing. Actually, of course, that was nothing like that. This Kristallnacht happened to happen on the 15th anniversary of Hitler's first attempt to take power in Munich. And that was no accident. It was well prepared. People that were involved in this had addresses of businesses they were supposed to vandalize. They had addresses of the various synagogues all over Germany that were to be burned or vandalized depending on where they were. And they had addresses that were transported by public transportation. And as I said, they had pre-printed big signs to put on all the storefronts saying no Jews allowed, and so on. There were over 100 synagogues were vandalized and burnt. The main synagogue in Munich was not, because it was no longer there. About 6 months before that, the leaders of the congregation were called and told that we need the land that this building is on, so starting tomorrow we will tear the building down. And you have the rest of today to take out of the building whatever you want. And as they said, the next day they started tearing the building down and it was no longer there at Kristallnacht. The other part of Kristallnacht, of course, was that all Jewish males over 17 years were to be sent to concentration camps. We had a lot of luck here in a way. My older brother, who was 17, happened to be in the hospital with appendicitis, so he wasn't taken. My dad was kept in hiding by a non-Jewish friend who by that time was taking a real chance for himself and his family. My mother and I decided not to go home because we didn't want to be in a position where we could be asked whether we knew where my dad was. So we spent the next couple of days at my grandmother's, first trying to find some food to buy and find a store that didn't have the signs up, no Jews allowed. But anyway, we were there, and a couple of days later, we decided somebody had to go to get the newspapers and the mail and to get a couple of other things out of there and take him to where my dad was. And I was the one chosen to do that on the basis that adults tend to pay less attention to children than they do to adults. So I did that. Well, a few days later, there was an announcement that any Jew that was in hiding, and if he was captured, would be executed. So my dad decided to give himself up. He went to the local Gestapo headquarters, that's the secret police, to turn himself in on a Friday. He was saved by the bureaucracy because he went there on a Friday afternoon, and the clerk that had to do all the paperwork to take him in didn't want to do that all on a Friday afternoon. He told him to go back home and come back on Monday. By Monday, they didn't want him anymore. In the meantime, people in the concentration camps were not killed yet. This wasn't an extermination camp, but people died of mistreatment. Anyway, this, as far as I was concerned, the Kristallnacht was a dividing line. As far as the Germans were concerned, it was a rehearsal for what they were going to do later on a much larger scale. As far as the Jewish population was concerned, it was a final wake-up call that there was no way this was going to get better. That everybody knew that the war was going to start the next following year, and the only possibility was to try to get out. Well, trying to get out was not all that easy. First of all, there were not very few places that would take Jews. There were places like Cuba, for a while anyway.
Want me to stop?
Yes, please. Yes, please.